So we are making the Alia top. I am going to be doing this scooped open back with the wee ruffle on it. The fabric, the main top, is going to be in this lovely turquoise linen viscose blend, and then I'm going to do the ruffle in the mosaics fabric that I'm using for the skirt, just as a nice wee contrast. In the pattern, this back piece is double layered, so there is lining using the same fabric or a different fabric. For this though, as it's a summer top and one that I will definitely be wearing on holidays, I am going to use a bias binding to finish all the edges. So that'll be this opening, armholes, and the neckline as well. The arms and neck are finished with a bias on the top view, and then these three. This one here is finished with a facing, but we'll show you how to do this bias binding for the other versions. So as I say, I am making the binding out of this, which is going to be a lovely contrast on the inside. So I have my pattern master ruler here, which does have the 45-degree angles marked on it. If you don't have anything like this or quilting ruler, you can still mark this very easily on your fabric. So if we mark, I'm going to mark a point here that is 20 centimeters across, and then go 20 centimeters up on the self edge here, and that will give us our right angle, or that will give us our 45-degree angle here. And I'm using a heat erasable pen. So I will be cutting bias binding at 3.5 centimeters. So the seam allowance is 1 centimeter, and that gives us enough to fold it over 3 times, plus an extra 0.5 centimeter just in case for anything that's lost when folding it. So if you're using scissors to cut this out, you'll want to draw all your lines in. If you're using a rotary cutter, you can just do the first ones and then use your ruler for to help you measure the rest. So once your bias strips start to get a wee bit longer, you can fold this in half and cut them on the fold. So if you fold it up where you've already cut, making sure you've still got a nice straight bias there. And then that will speed things up for you. So I have cut about 10 strips here, which should be enough to do the neckline, armholes, and this curved edge around the front and the back. So then to join them up, you want to make sure so we are going right sides together, and you'll be sewing them at an angle like this, which will then fold back on itself to give you your long strips of bias. So I'm not going to join them all together because some of them will just need smaller pieces for the neckline or the armholes, and then join a few of them up for the longer pieces. We are now ready to sew our bias binding on. I have sewn the shoulders together and the side seams that overlock them, the darts are sewn as well. I have also, because we are going to be sewing the bias binding on, and these seams are all going to be getting sort of stretched and pulled at and worked at quite a bit, I have stay stitched around the armholes, the neckline, and I've also gone round this curved edge here at the back. So this will all just help to stabilize these areas a wee bit before we start adding the bias binding. So we will start with the armhole, which can be one of the trickiest parts because, as you can see, it is quite a tight curve here. So right sides together, we're going to start down here at the underarm seam, and I'm just going to trim this bit off the end here. So to start, I'm just going to fold this back 1 centimeter approximately and pin it on there. That means when we get around, back around to the start of it, this will already be all tucked in. So when you're attaching your bias binding, you don't want to pull it really tight because then there's going to be too much tension in it. You also don't want it to be too loose. So for this first initial curve, we want to pull it just ever so slightly so that it's taut. Because then when we flip it around to the other side, we'll be stretching it out ever so slightly. So it's getting those sort of stretched areas right. But when you're putting it on, you just want to hold it just very, very gently, pull it, but not so that it distorts the shape too much. And by pulling it that wee bit tighter here when you're first doing your first row stitching, it should help it sit nice and flat. When I get to the shoulder, I'm just going to push that seam towards the back. So now I'm going to sew this so you can see there where, because we've held it that wee bit tighter, you can see where it's sort of trying to pull up. So as we're sewing it, we're going to hold it out nice and flat, and then when that turns over and flips in, it's going to be easier to sort of curve out the opposite way. As you can see, I haven't folded my bias binding in. So if you were finishing a seam, you would have it, you know, folded in so that it's meeting in the middle, and that's going to give you your edge to then fold over. As we're just attaching this to the armholes and the neckline and the back, it's much easier. We'll just be flipping it over, tucking it in once, and then turn it around. So you don't want just as much bulk in here. So I have not pressed this. I find it much easier just to sew my 1 centimeter seam and then use that as my guide for folding everything in. So we have sewn this on the whole way around with our 1 centimeter. Next stage is to clip into all the curves, and then we'll be understitching the bias to the seam allowance. So just do wee triangles the whole way around. This will help it all open up and release any tension. So now I'm going to gently press the bias away from the top And then we will be top stitching along here and making sure that we catch this, making sure that we catch the seam allowance underneath. We'll just stitch a line down across here. So that's it all pressed over to the inside here, and we have it understitched as well. So now we're just going to tuck this in, one more fold, and top stitch it down. So you might find here when you're pressing this area especially, tailor's ham can be very helpful, just for getting, because of the shape of the curve, and then you've got the sort of tight hole for the armhole, it can all just get a wee bit tricky to iron it without ironing other bits of the top in as well. And it can help you get a nice sort of rounded shape as well when you're pressing this. So now this time we want to, as we're going, we are trying to shape the binding to match the shape of the arm. Okay, so now we will top stitch this, sort of when I'm top stitching, I'll not be watching the edge of the binding. I'm going to be using this folded edge here as my guide, because it's this stitching here that we'll see visible from the outside, so I want to make sure that it looks neat. And now you can see we have a lovely flat bias bound seam, and with this wee bit of the mosaics peeking out, it just makes it gives it a really, really nice finish. So obviously it's plain top, but you've got that wee peak of colour and print on the inside. And you're just going to repeat that for the neckline, the other armhole, and then once we have the ruffle sewn on here, repeat the same on the back.